The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
If you find it hard to concentrate or pay attention these days, you're not alone. Tonight, writer Johann Hari explains why he says our ability to focus was stolen and what can be done about it. First up, a powerful conversation with former federal cabinet minister Lisa Raitt on the hell of caring for her husband who has early-onset Alzheimer's. It's Thursday, January 27th, and that's all next on The Agenda. Lisa Raitt had a successful political career for more than a decade, some of that time as a cabinet minister and deputy leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. But through a series of social media posts in her post-political life, she has become the voice for a generation of caregivers in this country. Back in 2016, Lisa's husband, Bruce Wood, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at the age of 56. And since then, too much of her life has been pure hell. Lisa Raitt joins us now from Moffat, Ontario, just northwest of Milton, with more on her odyssey as a caregiver. Lisa, it's really good to see you again. Thanks for doing this tonight.
I appreciate the invitation, Steve. It's an important topic.
Indeed it is. I want to start by showing you a picture that I know you have seen before. Oh. Look at that gorgeous gang. There you are with your two sons. Yeah. And with the guy you fell in love with. And I want to start by having you tell us about that guy that you fell in love with in that picture.
Steve, it's hard to look at those pictures, man. Because I've done a really good job of compartmentalizing this so that I only see Bruce for what he is now. I don't think about what he was like before, and I certainly don't think about what it is that we've lost. And that's the only way that a lot of caregivers can get through the day. It's just focusing on the very much present. But to let you know, so he's wearing his Buffalo Bills jacket, and he would have been absolutely devastated by the game that happened on Sunday evening. Yes. I screamed for him, I will say, and I did ask his nurse to put it on the general television at Baycrest. I'll find out tonight whether or not he actually watched it. But Bruce was a very powerful guy. He was CEO of CAA Southwestern. He was CEO of the Hamilton Port Authority. He absolutely was a fantastic golfer. He had lots of great friends. And he was a guy's guy, for lack of a better word. You know, he loved football. He played hockey on the weekends. And as time went by, I noticed a bit of a change in personality. A significant one. He became a lot more irritable, a lot more cranky. And to be honest, by the time we got to 2014 and 15, I thought we weren't going to get married. We were going to break up because he was so difficult to deal with. And they noticed it at work. And at work, what they noticed is that he couldn't write reports anymore. And he didn't know when meetings were happening. When he traveled for business, he always had to have somebody with him. I remember getting very angry at him in 2013 because he had his assistant go to a conference with him in Vancouver. And I was at the conference as well as the minister. And I was just so upset that he would bring her. And I'm a little sad now because I realize he brought her because he just couldn't function. He couldn't make meetings and he was terrified. So that was his workaround on how to deal with it. So, you know, it was a steady decline. We met in 2008 and became a couple in 2009. And between 9 and 13 were the good years. And then from 13 on, you could start to see the symptoms. And it really did take away from that wonderful, joyous personality and fun guy that I knew.
What year did you get married, Lisa?
16. We got married after the diagnosis because, number one, it explained a whole lot of what was going on in our relationship. Little things, you know, things that drive couples crazy. Like I would say, where would you like to go to dinner tonight? And he would say, you make the decision, or he would ignore me, or he'd forget my birthday or get the wrong cake for my birthday. I hate Black Forest cake, and he used to buy me Black Forest cake 3 years in a row. And it became a little bit of a joke in my family, but the reality is that he knew there was something about that cake. He just forgot it was the fact that I detested it. But he and I, we got married in 16. And the reason why was because I wanted him to have certainty and I wanted him to know that I had his back. and I was going to be there for him, and I was going to look after him. And we were more than just co-signers on a mortgage. We were life partners, and we were legal and blessed by the church. So that was very important for me.
I know you've been asked this before, and I know it's a tough question. I mean, you knew that your life going forward was going to be nothing like the life that you had originally hoped for when you two got together as a couple, and you married him anyway. No second thoughts about that, eh?
Not even, I mean, actually, so Bruce wanted to get married lots of times. And what I would always say to him is, I'm a cabinet minister and I'm pretty busy. I can't organize a wedding. And I said, it's up to you to organize it. If you want to get married, you organize it. And he never did. And the reality is, Steve, he couldn't organize anything. He had lost executive functioning. So when I realized that in March, I sat down and I had dinner with a couple of girlfriends in Ottawa at Highs, because it was open at the time. And I said, I think I want to get married. And we put it together in 30 minutes. 30 minutes is how long it took for us to pick a date, pick where we were going to have it, how we were going to handle the food, and who was going to be invited. And that was it. We just put it in action. All hands on deck. And I'm grateful for them for being there.
Let's share some numbers that you know all too well, because you, of course, are representative of a lot of people who are going through the same kind of thing across this country right now. Sheldon, if you would, let's put up this graphic. More than 500,000 people in Canada have dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. At least 16,000, that's 2 to 8% of all cases, suffer from what's called young onset dementia. That's what Bruce has. What qualifies somebody for young onset? Well, when symptoms show up before the age of 65, some people are diagnosed even as young as their 30s when they get young onset dementia. Now, let me follow up with that. And I'm going to ask our director, Sheldon Osmond, again, to put up a more recent picture of you and Bruce, since we've seen some of the pictures from back in the day. And Sheldon, at your convenience, dissolve to the next one as well. And Lisa, maybe you could tell us when these pictures were taken.
Those were taken Christmas of 2020. And he was in real bad shape at the time. He was in really bad shape. You can tell that he wasn't shaving. He wouldn't let us shave him. He was just having a horrible time with being tormented by hallucinations, and he didn't know who I was. He'd ask me all the time who I was. He would tell me he wants to go home. I would say, this is your home. All the wrong things to do, by the way. You're not supposed to tell them that this isn't their home. You're supposed to say, yes, I'll take you to your home, and find a way to divert them. But he wasn't sleeping. He was roaming around the house at night. I wasn't sleeping. It was terrible. It was terrible. But in that moment where you saw me crying a little bit was we were looking at my wedding ring, and I said, do you know what this is? And he said, yeah, you're my wife. And it's the first time in a long time I heard him say that. And that's why I choked up in the moment.
You began to post on your Facebook page some accounts of the changes that you saw in your husband. Why did you decide to do that?
You know, maybe it was a cry for help, Steve, and understanding. So we're in the lockdown. It is the pandemic. It is the spring of 2020 rolling into the fall of 2020. It seems so long ago now, but it was not very long ago in my world. Bruce started to decline rapidly, and his changes were behavioral in nature. And he just started being very destructive and very obstructive and very threatening. He would threaten my kids. He threatened me. He put holes in the wall. He ripped doors off hinges. He destroyed the side of a car with a garden implement. It was a pair of large shears. He was just out of his mind, literally. He would have fights in Costco with his reflection in the big mirrors or in the big freezer doors. When we were driving, he would think that his reflection in the side view mirror was somebody he wanted to fight. He would try to open the door. He would undo his seatbelt. Completely unmanageable during the day. And then at night, it was worse. He would get up at night and roam around. He would be all through the house. He would break stuff. He would try to get out of the doors. And then he wouldn't wear pants. And then he wouldn't get dressed. And then he wouldn't bathe. And it was just continuing. I started posting after he became physically aggressive with me. And the reason being is perhaps I was looking for somebody to call up and say, look, here is where you need to go, and this is what you need to do. Because although I was talking to people within the health system, I really wasn't getting the help that I needed. I really, really wasn't. And he was so young and so big and so strong that any of the normal interventions that they would counsel you on just didn't work. And it put us at great peril. And I posted that. And boy, I was really shocked how many other folks out there are in exactly the same situation.
Well, I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want to follow up on, because you did something that was, super important in terms of being able to explain to people what you and what your household was actually like at that moment. You must have grabbed for your iPhone and taken some video of Bruce in a moment that would be just difficult to explain had you written it out. The video shows so much, and I want to just show us a short excerpt of some of that video that you took just to show people, give them a better sense about what your life was like. Okay, Sheldon, roll that if you would.
Got the rack. That's too stupid. I don't have a character. I got it. Oh. I get this. Right here. Right here. Right here. Well, say something.
What can I do?
I don't know. Get up and go.
Okay, I will.
Right now.
Okay.
Jesus Christ.
You had written that kind of thing would happen in the middle of the night and you would have sleepless nights. I have to ask you, were you in fear for your life at a moment like that?
The reason why the video exists is because I grabbed the phone to dial 911 because I didn't know which way it was going to go. That was about 5 a.m, and he had been up for most of the night. He was dressed. Actually, that's when he's vocalizing pretty good there. He doesn't have any vocalizing right now. He doesn't have many words, probably 30 words or so. So for me, it's kind of neat to see him. He's still there in that video. You know, he's still Bruce. He's very different today. He's not as alert as he is in that one, but the anger is there. And two things, Steve. One is you could hear him muttering, I don't have a car. That was on a constant loop in his head, that he wanted a car, he wanted to drive, because driving was freedom for him and he wanted to get away. And that's why he ended up bashing in the side of my car, because he didn't know how to drive it. It went from being a normal stick shift to being one of those turns where you dial how you dial to get into gear. And as a result, he couldn't drive it anymore and he was very frustrated. And then he was gesturing to his stomach area. And for the longest time, you know, we worked with doctors to try to figure out what was bothering him, what was his ailment, why was he so upset? And we never discovered what his ailment was, except for the fact that we think it was just incontinence. And then he was so frustrated that he couldn't remember when he was going to the bathroom anymore. And he blamed that on me. So we blamed the lack of car on me. He blamed that on me. And that would become very irritable to him, and he would react.
Here is some of what you wrote on your Facebook post, which we shall share with our viewers and listeners right now. Sheldon, if you would, the graphic, please. Bruce started having hallucinations and delusions in the fall 2019. In the beginning, it was him suddenly not recognizing who I was. On Christmas Day, 2019, he went to our neighbors to tell them that there was a strange woman in his house and he wanted her to leave. He recognized them, but not me. These moments would happen at least twice a week. Sometimes it would pass quickly, and sometimes he forced me to leave the house. Next, he threatened my parents, and they had to leave the house. He told my son Billy he was going to kill him and chased him. I took the knives out of the house. Lisa, I wondered during the course of all of this, how often you have to keep reminding yourself, this isn't him, this is the disease. This isn't him, this is the disease. Did you do that?
Oh, yeah. And I knew that. I knew that wasn't him. But I was afraid of him. I still am a little bit. in case he's still very strong. And I still get worried that if he gets angry, he's going to strike out. And of course, when he's being treated by nurses, and that's one of the reasons why, Steve, he couldn't go into long-term care. He was not accepted by anybody. So it was that's why he was stuck with me. That's why he was stuck in the house with me, because nobody would accept him in the state that he was in. It's just a reality. He's a danger. So I would remind myself of that all the time. I read every book possible on how to redirect, how to divert, what to do. I had carekeepers come in to try to do the same. He threatened them. And they were older women than I was and smaller in stature, and they were scared. And it was the disease. I know it was the disease, but the disease is embodied in a very strong, athletic man. And that's why the disease becomes extremely dangerous.
Yeah, we should remind everybody, he's like 6'2", 240 or something like that, right?
Yes, he is, exactly. And yeah.
Now you are, I know you are a tall person.
I'm tall,
but
yeah.
Well,
I'm 5'10", but we don't need to talk about my weight.
Let's just focus on the 5'10". You're a very tall, striking person. I agree. Again, I feel odd asking these questions because I don't want to invade your privacy, but I do want to give people a sense about what you were dealing with here. Did he ever strike you? Yeah,
he did. He punched me in the head. He punched my son Billy in the back, shoved him into a wall. He always picked on people smaller than him. My son JC is 6'4", so he's taller than Bruce, and he really didn't try to do anything to him at all. Christmas, just running up to Christmas of 2020, where it was really bad, the month of December was horrific, he actually tried to kick our King Charles Cavalier dog, Ruby, and Ruby was his princess. I mean, he loved that dog. He loves me, but he loved that dog. And he tried to kick her, and, he threw a punch at me, and my son stopped it. It could have been a lot worse than it was. And, the knives comment, I did take a picture around that time where I found a butcher knife underneath my bed. We shared bed, and I was underneath the bed on his side. And I realized that he had weapons stashed all over the house, and I didn't know about them. And it was terrifying. So I had to go through. I actually gave my knives to my next door neighbor, and they were out of the house as soon as I could.
My goodness. Okay, let's get back to your social media posts, because as you indicated earlier, you started to write some things on Facebook about your experiences, and before long, there are just, message after message after message after message from people who essentially said, I feel your pain. They're going through the same thing. At what point did you sort of realize that you were becoming a voice for a whole generation of caregivers across the country?
I realized it when I started having people go to a group that I suggested called Hilarity for Charity to belong to, a group helpline, for lack of a better word. So in the United States, there's a group called Hilarity for Charity, started by Seth Rogen, great Canadian comedian, and his wife, Laura. And what they do is they fund social workers and therapists to host group meetings with spouses of early onset Alzheimer's as caregivers. And I've been meeting with them since June of 2020. My group has been together. Some have left and some have come in. But when I noticed, the social worker told me that she is seeing more and more Canadians come in because of the fact that I'm talking about Hilarity for Charity. And that's when I realized that this was having an impact, and people really did want to reach out and get some help.
What do we not know but need to know about what life for caregivers is like?
That it's 24/7. That it really does take a toll on you emotionally and physically. And a lot of the times when you're young, you're put, or youngish, in your 50s, 60s, especially when it's a spouse, you are put in the position where you early retire, you take a part-time gig, you drop off in hours, you start not producing as well at work, and it has a real impact on you as an individual and on your career and on your trajectory of your career. And I think that's the piece that I'd like folks to understand from an economic point of view. There's a lot of folks who are going to be MIA in the workplace who should be in the workplace as a result of care responsibilities they have, which cannot be outsourced. Even if you want to pay for it, they just can't get outsourced into a care society because we just don't have the tools.
I know you're not going to complain about this, but I think it's probably worth putting on the record that you wanted to run for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada, and you had a lot of support out there, and you obviously couldn't do that well and make the commitment to doing that well, and have to take care of Bruce at the same time. How much do you rue the fact that, you had a great political career as it was, Lisa, but you might have been able to do more if not for this? How much do you think about that?
I think about it only in this context, that I would like caregivers to know that you think you can do it all, but you can't. You really can't. And that caregiving does take an impact. Look, when I was going through it, Steve, I thought I could do anything, I could travel. But in the meantime, here I am trying to figure out, okay, who's going to babysit Bruce while I go to do 3 weeks of French immersion in Quebec City? Every night I'm worried about him. I try to get him on the phone. I mean, those are real concerns. He wasn't even in really bad shape in 16, but I didn't want him to be left alone, because the enormity of knowing that you have Alzheimer's, because at the time he knew he had Alzheimer's and it was fatal, and that was extremely difficult. That was just so sad. And he was so angry about having the disease that I wanted to be there for that. But for anyone to say that I can do it all, yeah, maybe you can, but you need to have 24/7 around-the-clock caregivers. And that, my friends, cost about $300,000 a year. And nobody has that after-tax dollars.
Well, that does raise the question of what kind of policy changes you think we need for governments at all levels to implement in order to make the life of caregivers a little more civilized.
I'm going to focus on the group that I know the best, which is folks who end up having spouses who have behavioral problems, because they're the ones that can't tap into the normal community resources. Would my life have been better and easier if we didn't have COVID and Bruce could go to an adult daycare? Probably. I could probably balance it and then have some home care come in and then top it off with what I could afford in private care as well. I could have probably made it work. But he had behavioral symptoms, and as a result, he needed to be hospitalized because I just couldn't handle it here. There are only 16 to 20 beds available in Toronto for that. Think about it, 16 to 20 beds for that. And it's always full, and it always has a wait list. And then after they're treated and better, like Bruce is now, there's no place to put them. So they end up staying in the hospital, taking up a bed that probably is really well needed. So for me, a big policy piece is understanding that Alzheimer's is a striation of many different ages and many different types. And don't assume that it's all the case where it's your 78-year-old grandmother who is very docile and is slipping away quietly, and you worry about her wandering. It's not always that case. Sometimes it's a real serious matter, and we have to be nimble, and we have to step back from this, I guess, this assumption that the burden can be carried by people at home, because it really can't.
Where is Bruce now?
So Bruce is on a behavioral neurology unit at Baycrest Hospital in Toronto, 4 West. He is there not because he was on a wait list and finally made it in. He is there because I had to call 911 on January 1st, 2021. He was, I'm going to be graphic, Steve, because I think it's important. So the police had to come. They had to handcuff him and take him away to the Milton Hospital. I couldn't visit him for the first 24 hours because of COVID. And then finally, he was so disruptive that they said, we'll bring her in, meaning me. And when I saw him, he was in a room with a locked door and a window. There was a security guard outside of his door. And inside, he was restrained by 4 points, 2 hands and 2 feet, and was in an adult diaper. And that's it. And I was horrified because the system didn't know how to deal with somebody that big with hallucinations and delusions. And, physical restraint is difficult. Chemical restraint is equally difficult. Shooting them up with Haldol or some kind of strong sedative is also really difficult. But from there, he was, thank goodness, he was admitted to the Oakville Trafalgar psych unit, where he was not it wasn't an appropriate fit. And he was just there waiting until he ended up getting a bed at Baycrest. But the key for all of this is that when the doctor would say to me, we're going to discharge him into your care from the hospital, there's nothing we can do, I would say, I'm sorry, but I'm fearful for my safety. And that means he becomes the responsibility of the hospital system. And there are so many folks who have to resort to that level of violence in order to get the help for their loved one that they need. That the quickest way to get somebody admitted into a specialty unit is by calling 911.
Are you or any of the kids able to see him right now?
Yeah, I go 3 times a week now. And through the last year, he has a great team that work with him. And he has gone from being what you saw to being lovely and, very quiet and calm. He can't speak as well anymore. He's hunched over because the medications do take a toll on him. He's on very strong anti-hallucinogenic medication. He is on an antidepressant to help him as well, but he's mobile. And he recognizes when he sees me, and he's no longer growling. He recognizes his own picture, his own reflection. But and he eats well, put on a little bit of weight. But if he's awake for 16 hours a day, he probably walks and paces for about 12 of them. Just walks around and around and around, and keeping his time.
In our last minute here, Lisa, I need to ask you whether the unfairness of the life that you two should have had but don't have, whether that ever overwhelms you.
No, because you have never known the depth of love that you get from having somebody who you're caring for appreciate you and light up when you walk into a room. And I don't think of Bruce as a patient. I still think of him as my spouse, as my husband. I still love him, always will love him. And I love him as my partner. Am I frustrated that I can't talk to him about what's going on in politics? Absolutely. By the way, Steve, I knew that there was something wrong when he started telling me he thought he liked Justin Trudeau. And I would look at him and say, who are you? What is going on here? But he listen, I make light of it only because I tear up a little bit when I talk about it. Caregiving is the greatest gift. It is the greatest gift you can ever be given, to be able to look after somebody that you love. But you also have to be safe, and you have to make sure that you're giving them the best care that can possibly be given. If somebody else can give care that is better than yours, then you have to hand it off, and you have to make sure that he's looked after. And that's where we are right now, waiting for a bed in a behavioral support unit at a long-term care facility, and hoping that he can go back to having more visits from me and the rest of his family, because I'm the only one that can see him now.
Amen to that. Lisa Raitt, I can't thank you enough for coming on to TVO tonight and sharing your experiences, which will no doubt resonate with so many people who are watching and listening to this. Godspeed to you and to Bruce and your whole family going forward.
Thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate it.
You know the sensation, right? That drifting attention span and difficulty concentrating. But it's much bigger than that, according to writer Johann Hari. He explains in his new book, it's called Stolen Focus, Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again. And he joins us now from London, UK. Johann, it's great to have you on our program again. How are you managing through this pandemic?
I'm so happy to be back. And I wish I was in Toronto, but that's partly because I wish I was anywhere but London, although I do love Toronto. So
Marvelous. Well, let's start with this. I want to start kind of where you do in the book, with a trip to Graceland with your godson. And what did that trip reveal to you about, well, let's start with him, his ability to focus?
Yeah, when he was 9 years old, my godson Adam developed this brief but freakishly intense obsession with Elvis. So he would kind of run around singing Viva Las Vegas or Suspicious Minds. And it was particularly being cool. And one night I was tucking him in, and every night he would get me to tell him the story of Elvis's life. I tried to skip over the death on the toilet, obviously. And one night when I was tucking him in, he looked at me very intensely and he said, "Johann, will you take me to Graceland one day?" And I said, yeah, sure. In the way you do with 9-year-olds, knowing that like next week it'll be Legoland or whatever. And he said, no, really, do you absolutely promise you will take me to Graceland? And I said, yes, I absolutely promise. And I didn't think of it again until 9 years later, when so many things had gone wrong. So he dropped out of school when he was 15. And by the time he was 19, it's funny, we were sitting on the sofa just behind where my laptop is now. And he was sitting there, and it's like his personality, it's like his ability to be present in the world had profoundly fractured. He spent his life alternating between his iPhone, his iPad, and his laptop. And his life was just passing in this blur of YouTube, Snapchat, WhatsApp, pornography. And I was trying to talk to him all day and just not getting any traction. And to be honest, I wasn't that much better. I was sitting there on my own devices. And I suddenly remembered this moment all those years before. And I said to him, let's go to Graceland. And he was just completely puzzled. He didn't even remember this thing. But I was like, no, let's go to Graceland. Let's break this numbing routine. This is no way to live. But you have to make one promise. You have to agree that when we go, and we'll go all over the South, you have to leave your phone in the hotel during the day so you're not just constantly distracted. And he made this promise, absolutely sincerely made this promise. And 2 weeks later, we took off for New Orleans. We went there first. And a few weeks later, we arrived in Graceland. And when you arrive at the gates of Graceland now, there's no person to show you around. This is even before COVID. What happens is they hand you an iPad and you put in earbuds, and the iPad shows you around. It says go left, go right, and it narrates facts about the room you're in, and it displays on the iPad the room that you're in. So what happens is everyone just walks around Graceland staring at their iPad. So we're walking around, and I'm trying to make contact with someone to go, oh, isn't this funny? We're the people who traveled thousands of miles and actually looked at the place we traveled to, but no one is looking at me. And we got to the Jungle Room, which was Elvis's favorite room in Graceland. And there was a Canadian couple next to me, no disrespect to Canada on this one, and the husband turned to his wife and he said, hey, honey, this is amazing, look. And he held up the iPad and he said, if you swipe left, you can see the Jungle Room to the left. And if you swipe right, you can see the Jungle Room to the right. And I laughed. I thought he was joking. And I turned to him, and then him and his wife are just swiping back and forth. And I said to him, hey, but sir, there's an old-fashioned form of swiping you could do. You could just turn your head, because look, we're actually in the Jungle Room. And him and his wife just continue scrolling. And I said, a little bit more manically, I said, no, really, look, we're in the Jungle Room. And they sort of backed away, no doubt thinking I was insane, possibly correctly. And I turned to my godson to laugh about it. And he was in a corner looking at Snapchat, because from the moment we landed, he just could not stop. And I walked up to him and I did what many people in parental positions have tried to do, and it never works. I tried to grab the phone off him. And I said, I know you're afraid of missing out, but this is guaranteeing that you'll miss out. You're not showing up to your own life. You're not present at the events of your own existence. This is no way to live. And he stormed off, again, understandably. And I found him that night in the Heartbreak Hotel, which is around the corner where we were staying. And he was sitting by the swimming pool, and he was just looking at his phone, and I went up to him and I apologized for getting so angry. And he said to me, I know something's really wrong, but I don't know what it is. And that's when I realized, for a long time, I had been thinking about the subject of attention. And I was in some ways quite glib about it. I felt like with each year that passed, it felt like my own ability to pay attention was getting worse. Like things that required deep focus, like reading a book, things that are very deep to my sense of myself, were getting more and more like running up a down escalator. You know what I mean? I could do it, but it was getting harder and harder. But I would reassure myself by saying, well, every generation thinks this, right? This is just a perennial human challenge. You can read a letter from one monk to another nearly 1,000 years ago where he says, oh, my attention ain't what it used to be. So I would tell myself, this is just this is just how it is. And it was really looking at him that made me think, you know what? Actually, at some level, I think something might be changing. Memphis, I ended up going on a really big journey all over the world. I traveled from Melbourne to Moscow to Montreal to interview over 200 of the leading experts on attention and focus. And what I learned from them is there's scientific evidence for 12 factors that can make your attention better or make your attention worse. And loads of those factors have been getting significantly worse in recent years. We really are in an attention crisis, and your attention didn't collapse. Your attention's been stolen from you by these really big forces, and we're going to have to take them on.
We are going to talk about those big forces, but I presume it's fair to say that the pandemic has actually exacerbated that which you had already identified as a huge problem in our lives.
You know, it's so interesting you say that, Steve, because there was something I learned before the pandemic, one of the 12 factors that really helped me to understand something that happened during the pandemic. So you'll remember, I'm sure loads of people said to you, like they did to me, when the pandemic hit, those of us who were lucky enough to not have to do the heroic job of being a healthcare worker or one of the essential jobs, a lot to not have to do the heroic job of being a healthcare worker or one of the essential jobs. A lot of people said, oh, I'm going to have loads of time at home. I'm going to read War and Peace. I'm going to learn French on Duolingo. They had all these big, ambitious goals. And nobody read War and Peace that I know, and nobody learned French. In fact, people Googling things like, how do I get my brain to work, went up by an extraordinary amount. And I think it's because of one of the factors that I write about, which I learned about from an incredible woman named Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, who's now the Surgeon General of California and a completely extraordinary person. And Nadine said to me one day, imagine one day you were attacked by a bear out of the blue and you survived. In the weeks and months that followed, something completely involuntarily would happen to your attention. You would find it harder to focus on immediate things in front of you, like reading a book, because a big part of your brain would be involuntarily scanning the signs of risk and danger. You'd be looking out, something came out of the blue to attack you, so you'd be looking out for other things that might come out of the blue to attack you. Okay. Now imagine that a bear attacks you again. At that point, you're likely to flip into a state called hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is where you can't focus on deep forms of focus because so much of your mind is focused on, okay, where's the danger coming from? And as Dr. John Giardini, who's a wonderful child psychologist in Adelaide, said to me, you know, deep focus is a really good strategy when you're safe. For example, if you read a book, you'll grow, you'll learn more. But deep focus is a really dumb strategy if you're in danger. You'd be a fool to sit at the Battle of the Somme and read a novel. You're not going to be alive very long. And I think what's happened is, and as everyone knows, this pandemic has plunged us into a profound sense of danger, right? Obviously, there's the danger of the virus. There's the danger of all the things that have upended our lives. It's flipped us into a state of vigilance where it's harder to focus, harder to pay attention to the deeper things. This fits with a much wider body of evidence we know from before the pandemic about how stress in general damages your ability to pay attention, and anything that reduces stress, and I go through lots of techniques on this in the book, improves your attention. So I think for a lot of us, especially this wave, especially the third time round, it's like the bear came back a third time. So the main thing I want to say to people is if you've struggled to focus in a global pandemic, you're not alone. It's not your fault. As with so many of these causes of attention problems, these are not your fault, but we can deal with them together.
Well, I guess we should point out that you were not asking, if we can go back to the example of your godson, you were not asking him to do anything that you yourself were not prepared to do. And in fact, you did do this. You went to Massachusetts, to not Boston, but a really far away place in Massachusetts, which did not have a lot of people and a lot of, urban niceties around. And you essentially went off the grid for a long time. And let's start with the reaction you got from friends and family that you told that you were going to do this. How did they react to all of that?
It's funny, when I came back from Memphis, I was so horrified by what I felt like was happening to everyone that I just realized, I just said to myself, I need to get out of this. I'm tired of being wired. I thought the problem was that I didn't have enough willpower and I had a smartphone. I later learned that was way too simplistic a way of understanding it. But so I just announced to everyone, I'm going offline completely for 3 months. I've rented a little room. I'm going away. I will have no laptop that can get online and I will have no smartphone. And so I went, and it was a really fascinating experience because one of the things that amazed me was how much my attention came back. I thought, I was nearly 40 then. I thought as you get older, your brain deteriorates. my attention went back with some ups and downs that we can talk about, but my attention went back to what it had been when I was 17. I could sit and read novels for 8 hours a day if I wanted to. And I'm conscious, by the way, this is unbelievably privileged that I got to do this. This is not something I'm recommending everyone do. That would be bizarre and insulting. My grandmother's job was to clean toilets, to suggest to everyone, it'd be like Marie Antoinette suggesting everyone try to do this. That's not what I'm suggesting. I was just desperate for myself. And it was really interesting when I later interviewed lots of scientists, over 200 of the leading experts. I learned some of the reasons why my attention got so much better. Actually, a lot of them go beyond tech. Only one of the 12 causes is related to tech. But I'll give you an example. In Provincetown, because I didn't have a phone that anyone texted, because I didn't have a laptop, I wasn't being interrupted. And I went to interview later, just across the water actually, a wonderful neuroscientist, one of the leading neuroscientists in the world, named Professor Earl Miller, who's at MIT. And he explained to me, there's one thing about the human brain that you need to understand more than anything else. You can only consciously think about one or two things at a time. That's it. This is just a fundamental limitation of the human brain. The human brain has not changed significantly in 40,000 years. It's not going to change on any timetable any of us are going to see. You can only think about one or two things at a time. But we have fallen for a mass delusion. The average teenager now believes they can follow 6 or 7 forms of media at the same time. So when Professor Miller's colleagues get people into labs and test them and get them to think they're doing lots of things at the same time, they always discover the same thing, which is when you think you're doing lots of things at the same time, you're not, you're actually juggling. You're very rapidly alternating between tasks. And it turns out that comes with a really big cost. The technical term for it is the switch cost effect. When you're trying to do lots of things at the same time, you do all of them less competently. You make more mistakes, you remember less of what you do, you're much less creative. This is actually a huge effect. There's lots of evidence for it. It was one study, a very small study, that really drove it home for me. You know, Hewlett-Packard, the printer company, they got a scientist in to do a little study with their workers. He split their workers into 2 groups. And the first group was told, just do whatever your task is and you're not going to be interrupted. And the second group was told, do your task and you've got to answer email and phone calls. And then at the end of it, they tested the IQ of all of them. The people who had not been interrupted scored 10 IQ points higher than the people who had been interrupted. To give you a sense of how big that effect is, if you or me, Steve, got together and smoked a lot of cannabis and got stoned, our IQs would go down by 5 points. So at least in the short term, this was double the effect on your intelligence just being interrupted as getting stoned. Now, we're all being interrupted a huge amount of the time. This is why Professor Miller says that we are living in what he calls a perfect storm of cognitive degradation as the result of being distracted. And one of the many changes that happened in Provincetown is I wasn't being interrupted. I was going about my day. I was doing one thing at a time. I wasn't in that constant pressure of, wait, what just happened? What did he just say? What? I suddenly realized how profoundly it degrades our brain power to be constantly interrupted in this way. There were loads of other changes that happened in Provincetown that I later learned improved my attention. From my sleep got much better. Sleep is essential for attention. There's no junk food in Provincetown. I had to eat healthy food. The way we eat is damaging our attention. There's lots of factors we can get to. But it was amazing to me how much of an improvement those changes could make.
There's a very funny story in your book where you try to go buy a new phone for this trip to Provincetown, Massachusetts, and you keep telling the guy, no, I don't want a phone that has access to the internet. I don't even want to be able to send emails. And he can't quite believe that you're looking for something that antiquated. Having said all that, when you were doing this experiment, were you lonely?
Yeah, at times I was. It's interesting. There was a moment, it was about 2 weeks in, I can remember it really clearly. I was walking down the beach and I saw exactly what I've been seeing saw in Memphis and so many other places. People were just looking at their devices. Provincetown is one of the most beautiful places in the world. People weren't looking at it. They're just staring at their screens, or they're using it just as a backdrop for selfies. But this time, instead of wanting to go, oh, you're not present at your life, you're wasting it, I wanted to grab the phone off them and go, me, give it to me. I want to look at my social media. Because what's happened to us is, the way I would put it, this is a very pretentious way of putting it, and I apologize, but Simone de Beauvoir, the great French philosopher, much better than her partner Jean-Paul Sartre, she said once that becoming an atheist, when she became an atheist, it was like the world had gone silent. And there was a moment for me in that second week when I'm deprived of all of the internet, when it felt like the world had gone silent because we've become so accustomed to the thin, insistent signals of the web. And of course, no normal social interaction floods you with hearts and likes, right? That would be a bizarre social interaction. So there's a moment when it feels like everything's gone silent. And I realized at that moment that actually I had created a vacuum and that I would have to fill that vacuum with something. I'd have to fill that vacuum with positive things. And actually then the friendships that I began to build up in Provincetown were so much richer because actually there were friendships where I had really looked into their eyes a lot. I wasn't being called away. I wasn't being distracted. I was really being present with the people I then met and was present with. And I think this is part of our crisis. We're having a real crisis of being present. And because my presence returned, I was able to make much deeper bonds than I think I otherwise would have.
So you are calling for an attention rebellion. What does that look like?
So there's two levels at which I think we need to respond to this attention crisis that we're experiencing. It's quite a serious crisis. The average American office worker now focuses on any one task for only 3 minutes, according to research by Professor Gloria Marks. It's a really big crisis. We can all see what's happening to young people. And I think there's two levels at which we need to respond. There are all sorts of things that we can do as isolated individuals to defend ourselves and our children. Of course, the last quarter of the book is about what this is doing to our kids. There's all sorts of things everyone watching can do tomorrow that will really help. But I want to be honest with people. That will help. I'm passionately in favor of you doing it, but it will only get us so far. Because at the moment, we're living in what Professor Joel Nigg, one of the leading experts on children's attention, called to me, an attentional pathogenic environment, an environment that is systematically undermining our ability to pay attention in all sorts of ways. And I think the key thing is we need to realize that we have to collectively take on the factors that are damaging our attention. Now, that can sound very fancy, kind of like what the hell's he talking about? I'll give you a very practical example from the past of when people have done this and apply it, if it's okay, to some of the factors in our tech, which I stress are only one of the 12 causes. So you'll remember this, Steve. I just remember it. My mother used to fill her car with leaded petrol. Right? Leaded gasoline was the norm in the 1970s. You might remember, so just before my time, people used to paint their homes with leaded paint. And it was known, going all the way back to ancient Rome, that exposure to lead is really bad for your attention and your brain generally. But by the 1970s, the science on this was overwhelming. So what happened is there was a movement of ordinary, mostly mothers, who led a campaign saying, this is damaging our kids' brains. We must not allow it. It's damaging their ability to focus and pay attention. We need to ban leaded gasoline and ban leaded paint. Now, it's important to notice what they didn't say. They didn't say ban all gasoline. They didn't say ban all paint. This is very relevant for when we get to the internet. They said ban the specific element that harms our attention. That ban came to pass. The CDC in the United States, the Center for Disease Control, estimates that change led to an average improvement of 3 to 5 IQ points on average for children across the United States. Now, there are specific factors in social media that are harming our ability to pay attention that we can deal with, I learned from the leading experts in Silicon Valley, in a very similar way. So if you open Facebook now, or if your kid opens TikTok, those apps start to make money out of you in two ways. The first is obvious, you see ads. We all know how that works. The second way is much more important. Everything you do on those apps is scanned and sorted by those apps and their algorithms to figure out who you are. And the reason, as people always say in Silicon Valley, is you are not the customer of those apps. You are the product they sell to the advertisers. So let's say that you say on Facebook that you like, I don't know, Barbara Streisand and Donald Trump, and you tell your mother that you just bought some diapers. Okay, so the algorithm figures out, okay, you're a man who likes Barbara Streisand, you're probably gay. You like Donald Trump, you're probably conservative, and you bought some diapers. Okay, you've probably got a baby. It's building up all this information to sell access to your attention to advertisers. That's where they make the big bucks, right? So every time you open Facebook, they make money through that. The longer you scroll, the more money they make. The more often you pick up the phone, the more money they make. Every time you put it down, those revenue streams disappear. So all of this engineering genius, all of this algorithmic brilliance, all of this phenomenal machine power gathered in Silicon Valley is geared towards one thing and one thing only: How do we take as much of your attention as possible? This isn't my view. This isn't just the view of the dissidents. This is what Facebook themselves say. Sean Parker, one of the biggest initial investors in Facebook, said, we designed it to maximally take people's attention. We knew what we were doing and we did it anyway. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. That's what he said. So the analogy with lead paint here, I think, is really important. The tech industry wants us to frame this debate as, are you pro-tech or anti-tech? And of course, that just induces fatalism, because what does it even mean to be anti-tech? We're not all going to convert to the Amish. We're not going to give up technology. That's not the question. The question is, what tech do we want? Working in whose interests, having what effects on your mind and your children's minds? So Asa Raskin, who designed key parts of how the internet work, said to me, look, the first step of the solution is very simple. We need to ban the current business model. Just ban it. We banned lead. We don't allow it. We should just ban a business model which is based upon identifying the weaknesses in your attention, hacking them and selling them to the highest bidder. And I said to him and many of the other people who proposed this to me in Silicon Valley, people who are at the heart of designing the machine that your kids and the kids everywhere are using, I said to them, okay, but if we do that, what happens the next day? Do I open Facebook and it just says, sorry, we've all gone fishing? And they said, of course not. What would happen is they would have to move to a different business model. And everyone watching has experience of two of the other business models they could move to. One is subscription. We all know how Netflix, HBO work. Could be like that. You pay a small amount. Or it could be everyone listening is connected to the sewer system. Before we had sewers, we had feces in the street, we had cholera outbreaks. So we all paid together to build the sewers, and we all maintain the sewers together. You own the sewers in Toronto. I own the sewers in London, along with all the other taxpayers here. It might be that, like we want to own this, and we do own the sewage pipes together, we may want to own the information pipes together, because we're getting the equivalent of cholera for our attention, for our society, for so many things. But the key thing is, if we move to this different business model, all the incentives change, right? At the moment, these things are designed specifically to hack your attention, because that's how they make money. But if we move to these different models, suddenly you're not the product they sell. Suddenly you're the customer. And they have to say, what does Steve want? Oh, Steve wants to be able to pay attention. Okay, let's design the app not to hack his attention, but to heal his attention. That's just as technologically feasible as Facebook. The dissidents I interviewed in Silicon Valley could do 100 changes to Facebook tomorrow that would begin to restore people's attention. But at the moment, the incentives are not there. So the reason I relate this to a movement is, of course, the big tech companies aren't going to do that on their own, any more than the lead industry was going to go, you know what, lead paint is really harming people. Let's not do this anymore. Of course, that's not how it works. There had to be a movement to make them do it. And I would argue that we need an attention movement. There are all sorts of factors that are invading your attention and my attention, deeply invading them, deeply harming them, and they are on course to get worse. And the only thing that's going to stop that is a movement of ordinary people determined to protect our minds and our children's minds. And that requires a shift in consciousness. We need to stop blaming ourselves. We need to stop acting like it's our fault. We are not medieval peasants begging at the court of King Zuckerberg for a few little crumbs of attention from his table. We are the free citizens of democracies, and we own our own minds, and we can take on these forces that are deeply invading our attention if we want to, but we'll have to come together to do it.
I take the point that you're making. In our last minute here, I guess I want to share with you why I'm a little pessimistic about the possibility of that happening. And that is, I like the example of the lead in the paint, but everybody gets why lead in paint would lead to the kinds of adverse health effects that they did. I'm convinced that there's still a grand swath of the world that doesn't understand the adverse health effects, as you've described them, of social media and Facebook in particular. And I remember when Zuckerberg came before Congress, one of the senators asked him, how do you actually make money since you give it away for free? The people who make the laws, the people who make the regulations, that was Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, I think at the time, who just didn't get it. They don't understand it. How can you ask them to make regulations and to force a change of business model in something they so clearly don't get?
I think you're absolutely right. We've got to have a huge amount of consciousness raising. Rebecca Solnit, the writer, says politicians are weather vanes and it's our job to be the weather. You're right, Orrin Hatch is never going to understand this, but we can make him understand it. Just like politicians did the right thing about gay people, they did the right thing on moving closer to equality for women, not because they suddenly had some Damascene revelation, but because we made them do it. So we've got to transform our own consciousness. And what I tried to do, obviously, we've spoken primarily about the tech aspect, but there's 11 other huge factors that are degrading our attention and focus. What we need is a consciousness-raising moment where we understand if you're struggling to focus, if you're struggling to pay attention, that will mean that you struggle to achieve your goals in life. It will mean you struggle to solve your problems. It's not your fault. We can understand. The analogy I keep coming back to is it's like someone is pouring itching powder over us all day, and then they're leaning forward and saying, you know what, buddy, you might want to learn how to meditate, then you wouldn't scratch so much. And you're like, yeah, I'll learn to meditate, but we need to stop these people pouring itching powder over us all day. And we absolutely can do that. I went to places from France to New Zealand that have begun the journey of taking on these forces and have begun to restore their citizens' abilities to focus and pay attention. This is not inevitable. This does not have to happen. We do not have to tolerate it being done to our children. We can fight back and we can get our minds back. Because these are recent changes. You know, we can take them on, we can reverse them. And just a last thought, really helped me with this is Dr. James Williams, one of the leading experts on attention in the world, said to me once, you know, the axe existed for 1.4 million years before anyone thought to put a handle on it. The internet has existed for less than 10,000 days. We can change these things if we want to.
Great point. Stolen focus, why you can't pay attention and how to think deeply again. Johann, it's awfully good of you to spend so much time with us on TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Oh, 100% my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that is the agenda for Thursday, January 27th, 2022. Tomorrow, Nam Kiwanuka finds out how the Omicron variant is different from those that came before, particularly for those very many people who have contracted it. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and Nam, we'll see you tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.